Yes, strong advocate of remote working. Okay, let's talk. I was a little fast on the slides. Please welcome Vincent Voyer. I will choose that. Yeah.
Is it working? Good? Everyone hear me? Okay. So, let's see if this is working. Yes. Okay. So welcome to my remote talk. It will speak a bit about how is remote at Algolia and how I work remotely and what is the team behind that. So I'm Vincent. I'm a JavaScript developer at Algolia for 3 years and a half. I went from JavaScript development to engineering management. And since September this year, I'm working remotely from Nantes. So that's a very recent move. I had a hard time preparing this presentation, to be honest. 2 months ago, Julie told me, do you want to do a talk on remote work? And I said, yes, why not? Because I cannot say no. But at the time, I had nothing in mind. But I thought, okay, I work remotely, so I must know what to talk about remote-wise. But still, so from time to time, I would think about it. This is my biking commute in Nantes, where I go through. So I would think about remote and trying to find what can I talk about. It's super different to be tasked to do a talk versus speaking about something I know, like JavaScript, a lot. Do I know remote work? Well, I'm not sure because you cannot define it super precisely. It's not like a JavaScript function that you can say, okay, it exists. It can mean a lot of things remote. So I did a Twitter poll because I'm super lazy. The poll was not a huge success because basically everyone told, you know, the numbers, they are all the same. But still, it was trying to get ideas. So instead, I thought deeply about my own way of working remotely and my own experience working remotely. And this is what this talk is about. So am I qualified to speak about remote work? Let's see. So 10 years ago, I started working remotely in the end. I did a bit of remote work. My wife told me, remember, this was me in Nantes with 2 co-founders. We were doing, it's a cool photo, the stripes were super popular. And we were doing online browser games. So it was going well, but my wife, she had an HR job in Paris, so we moved to Paris. And I told them, okay, guys, it's okay. I will work remotely. I will have a small office in my apartment. It's going to be fine. I had no experience working remotely. Working remotely was not a thing 10 years ago, clearly. It was just working at home, maybe. So this is my home office. It's a fake one. It's from the creator of Raise, but it's nice. So that was my screen. You imagine 10 years ago, it's my screen. I'm working at home. Everything goes well, first month. And then it's lunchtime. And after lunchtime, you have lunch break. So I take a lunch break. What can go wrong? So this is my lunch break. But soon enough, those lunch breaks, working at home, they turned into afternoon breaks and whole day breaks where I was supposed to be working, but I was just watching cats videos and playing massive online games, massive multiplayer online games. So my first experience working remotely was a complete failure for me. I was not ready at the time. Maybe there are a lot of other reasons why maybe it failed. We didn't have a lot of communication tools. Slack was not existent. We were using MSN Messenger to tell people, I'm going to change this code in this file. So super raw. So remote for me is that I quit my first job. So I quit this job. I told them 3 months after starting working remotely. So this is what remote was for me 10 years ago. And fast forward to 2019, remote at Algolia. So in here, I will walk you through a bit what is the team we created remotely and what is Algolia remote-wise. What are we doing remote-wise? Are we good at remote? So when I moved to Nantes, at the time I was a manager of a team that is inside this Paris office. And so I told my manager, I cannot move to Nantes and be a manager. I cannot work remotely and be a manager of people that are inside an office. It won't work. Because you have to be close to them physically as of today. So instead, we created a new team, developer support engineering teams. We provide support to developer, and this team was created from day one, fully remote. So I was the only developer at the time, and then we recruited people. So it was much easier to create a new team which is entirely remote from day one instead of taking a team and making it trying to work remotely. So this is where we are today. I'm in France, that's me. AJ, doing support also, is in Atlanta, and Jason is from Tulsa, Oklahoma. The blue dots are our offices, and we are recruiting in Europe if you want to. You can talk to me afterwards. So even if AJ and Jason, they are remote, when we onboarded them, when we hired them between basically July and September, we made them come to the PRS office to do a support training, to train them on the job physically in the office. And Jason, we all went to SF to regroup the three of us and do training again. Because we are not yet at a scale where we can train people remotely. We have to have them come to the office. And it's a good way for them to experience the Algolia culture and meet people, of course. So that's the team we created, easy one. I mean, for now, it's very recent, but it's working well. But when we created this team, more and more, and since at Algolia, we are a nice startup. I consider it a success. It is a success. It's nice to be working here. So people usually, they think of us like any of those cool startups today that are working remotely. And so they will ask, can I apply for while I'm remote? Or employees at Algolia ask, or just are wondering, will we go all remote at some point? So we get these questions, and the obvious answer is that why are we not maybe as remote as we want? Today we have 10 officially remote people. It's because we were never created as a remote first company. We were created with a culture for sure. Sorry. Okay. Okay, that's okay. So we are not like all those startups, remote companies that are speaking about them, for example, on remoteonly.org. So all those companies, they were created from day one as being remote. Or maybe they switched to being remote very easily. While Algolia, for example, today we are a 300 company, and we have 5 offices in the world. So moving those 300 people to maybe working remotely, it will take some time. We cannot do it so easily right now, because some teams, they may not want to be remote. Some teams, they may be relying on the fact that they are physically close to each other to be working well. And also, this is our office from the outside. This nice office, it's a 3 years or 4 years investment. So you don't roll back to being fully remote from there so fast. So if we ever do it, our culture and way of working will be impacted. For example, those events that we host, if you start a fully remote company, you don't have them. We also have internal events, people coming, speaking about what they do internally at Algolia. Yesterday evening, there was also an event in this office. So all of that, you lose it, and you have to recreate it somehow. So we will be a different company. If we ever move to a fully remote company or just semi-remote, then it will be teams by teams, gradually, and with acknowledgement of those teams on how they want to work. Note this was Algolia working remotely and how we do it. And right here, I want to still give you a bit of my favorite remote tips that I tend to practice. So I will go for employees tips, remote employees, remote companies, and remote teams. So the first one is on the left is when you are hiring or when you are applying more to a remote job. When you are applying to a remote job, a lot of candidates, some candidates, they will focus on the remote part and say, I want to work for you because it will be a remote job. And this is a failure. A lot of people that apply like that, Usually, we just refuse them because that's not the goal. Working remotely is just the implementation of work, what not you are going to do. You have to decide for yourself when you are a remote employee if you want to work from home or from a co-working space. As you have seen, I'm not a work from home person. I don't manage to work from home. So I work in a co-working space in Nantes. And for me, it allows me to have my brain wired up to work, being with other people working, instead of being alone. This part is, if you ever work at home still, I advise you to put on clothes and to put shoes. Even if it seems obvious, you have to make your brain switch from I am at home to I am working. And you can also go for a random walk in the morning before starting working and in the evening, so that your brain can switch from being working to being home and the other way around. For remote teams, my favorite tips is that write everything down. That's on the top at the left. It seems obvious, but to be fair, when you are at Algolia, for example, you don't write everything down because you can rely on people being next to each other to give you information. So when you are a remote team, you cannot do that anymore. You need to write down from interview processes to setuping of the coding environment, everything. Same thing from giving access to software you use. Everyone needs to have access to and be able to give access to others in a safe way, of course, but you cannot rely on someone being next to you to ask them, can I have access to Git, for example. The last one is when we do video meetings with people being remote, we tend to use, I like to use them to speak about everything that is non-work also. Because when you are a remote employee, you have less opportunities to speak about something else than work. So you need to use those remote video meetings to speak about your life and what you like, of course, along with working. Last, some remote companies tips. So from, again, if you want to have remote employees feeling confident about if they can work remotely, it's good to have remote policies. So at Algolia, for example, we have a policy that inform you what you can do and not do in terms of remote working, not just for us, but for people that are remote 1 day a week, for example. So that's good. Have a remote budget for fully remote employee. You want to consider remote employees as first-class employees and not second-class employees. So you need to give them an external screen, a good keyboard, and everything people get from the office at their home. Last, when you are in a video meeting as a company or as a team, if you have 7 people in a room and one of them is remote, you will never see that the remote person is giving physical insights that they want to speak. They will maybe just start speaking and they will be cut off. If this happens, remember that and ask them something else. It is a tip that works for every video meeting, but it's super important because you don't have body signs when doing a video meeting that someone wants to intervene in a meeting. You have a lot more advices on remoteonly.org, very nice website on everything from hiring to working remotely. So check that out. I'm reaching the conclusion. So what I learned working remotely, mostly 2 things. The first thing is that remote won't solve every one of your problems. I quit my first job because I didn't manage to work remotely, and I stayed at Algolia because I was able to work remotely. So given the situation, the time in your career, it might or might not work. Be aware of that. The second thing I learned, the most important thing for me, is that commute time is super important. So I was able to save 40 minutes of commute time by being remote. And I was able to make life choices that are not linked to my physical environment at work. So 40 minutes per day is 5 times a week, 42 times a year is 150 hours saved in a single year. Those hours, you can use them, for example, to cook a good meal with your wife, to play with your kid every evening, or to, yes, I missed one, but that's okay. That's it. That's what I learned working remotely. Thank you. If you have questions, go.
I'm wondering if there are places where you still feel like a second-class employee. If you'd be willing to share those as a second class as a remote.
Certain moments, you mean?
Certain things like, yeah, I don't know what the situation would be, but in certain meetings or the way that you're pulled into things or not pulled into, where do you feel that you're not first class still?
For that, I think we are good at Algolia. We use Slack a lot for communication, but maybe one thing is that I was used to be able to attain, to participate into events in this office. So happy hours, and we have not just happy hours drinking, we have also like gathering with people. And those ones I cannot attend them. It's not second class employee, just a trade-off, and that's okay. I go to the big company events, big company parties, things like that. That's it.
Any more questions for Vincent?
Thank you. You said it's really difficult to manage people in another office. So what do you think about that? Like, why is difficult? Why do you think people have to be together to be managed? So.
Yes, so it was not clear. So it's a good question. The thing is, I don't think you have to be in the same room to manage people or in the same office. For example, me, I'm managing someone in Atlanta and someone in Oklahoma, and it works fine. But you can only do it if everyone is on the same page. So if you are trying to manage people that are all in a group, or all in a physical space from a distance, then you are missing a lot of discussions. So you either are fully remote or not, but in between, it's super hard. That's the, yes.
Do you have any advice, for example, for the missing part that is going on in Nantes and in Atlanta? So, how do you manage to share what you have discussed? Just writing down your decisions, or how can you share?
Oh, you mean with your team?
Like you are having part of the team at Nantes and another part of the team at Atlanta. So how can you share the discussions that is going on at Nantes that no one's in Atlanta is knowing about?
It's not the case right now. We don't have someone in Nantes, but if it was, then for example, if we were in video meetings, I will ask everyone to be on a computer and not in a room, so that you see four screens instead of 3 and with people in the same room. So, and then, yes, using Slack as much as possible. And if something is worth sharing with everyone, just writing down in Slack, yes.
Any more questions?
Thank you for the talk. Just a quick question regarding what you were just saying. So you say you're using Slack as a tool to manage your team remotely, but basically, do you have a policy? You were talking about remote policies. Do you have policies when you want to share content? Like, do you prefer to share communication on public channels or on one-to-one channel with, the other worker? Do you have any advice for that?
Yes. As much as possible, we try to be transparent and public. Like, I don't really like private channel for teams. I prefer to have a team that have a public channel. Any feedback for a particular employee, you will give them to them in private, of course. Yes, I tend to go all for public, anything that is worth sharing with the team, and anything particular, then you just go to someone in particular, that's it.
Okay, and regarding like wiki or content that needs to be well organized before being shared by anyone.
You mean for how do we manage projects, things like that?
No, I mean like either a rule like you share publicly on the public channel most of the time, and then sometimes out of that public channel there's some information that needs to get out and be more organized, and then start a wiki out of that, and
yeah, when it's the case, yes, if it's for example a process, we have Confluence to handle that. We write our processes inside Confluence if it's something too big that needs to be written down. Yeah.
Thank you.
That's it.
Hi, I just wanted to know, do you have any issues interacting with other teams? Because we've been talking about how you interact within your team, but how about your team versus the rest of the company, and how does that relationship between full remote teams and non-remote teams work?
You repeat?
Sure. So the relationship between a fully remote team like yours and the rest of the company that's not remote, how do you manage that? What are the issues with managing that?
So yes, the issue is that people have a lot of questions about, like I said, like why don't we have more teams being remote, or why can't I work remotely? So the thing is that you do have inertia in a company like us, 300 people. Teams are organized to be working in a physical space. So the way you manage it is by doing this sort of presentation, just trying to explain that yes, we might have more and more remote ideas and just allow people to work remotely, but you cannot just leave your desk and work remotely from anywhere you want and leaving your team dealing with stuff inside the office. It has to be like a real process to set in place and to switch from non-being remote to being remote. Yeah, it's a tough one. Creating a fully remote team where a company is not remote, you have to communicate on that, yes. On the reasons, so the reason, for example, for our team is that we needed to have some people working in specific time zones because we provide support to people, to customers. So it was the reason that made us say, okay, it's a good opportunity to create a fully remote team because we want to recruit people in specific time zones, and we might not have all offices in all time zones. Thank you
Very much, Vincent.